Americans for Prosperity North Dakota proudly supported important policy improvements that broke barriers for all North Dakotans this legislative session. From tackling unnecessary and burdensome occupational licensing standards to fighting for tax relief, AFP is proud to have played a part in improving the lives of North Dakotans this year. Join AFP today by visiting www.afpnd.org. This advertisement was paid for by Americans for Prosperity. Welcome to the Plain Talk Podcast. I am your host, Rob Port. A little bit later in the show, going to be talking with State Senator Janne Myrdal. You may have seen some headlines recently about lawmakers complaining to North Dakota State University about a research partnership with Planned Parenthood. Now, obviously, Planned Parenthood is an organization which, even beyond your views on abortion, is partisan in nature. This is an organization that in a lot of ways has become sort of a de facto wing of the Democratic Party. And I think it's right to ask if that sort of a partisan organization, which campaigns against Republicans, which very much engages in partisan politics, is the right partner for an academic endeavor. But Senator Myrdal and I, she is a social conservative. I am of a more libertarian bent. Have a debate about sex education in our state. And, generally, I think those of us who are pro-life, who would like to see the number of abortions fall, should be looking towards, what can we do in terms of sex education to reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies? I think that's a debate worth having because, again, I think that's a goal that the majority on both sides of the abortion debate can get behind is, let's try to make pregnancy a choice, right? Nobody gets pregnant unless they want to get pregnant. Wouldn't that be a nice thing? Anyway, that discussion coming up in a little bit. But before we get there, let's talk about coal power. In the Minot Daily News recently, there was a letter from a leader in the North Dakota Democratic NPL Party. That person is a gentleman by the name of Brad Magnuson. He is chairman of his party's Renewable Energy Caucus. He wrote in the letter that long-term coal is not a viable source of energy. He continues, I quote, "Short-term, until renewables become exclusive in North Dakota, coal is merely a backup source of energy and not a primary source." Now, I think you probably heard a lot of rhetoric like that about coal in recent weeks, recent months, recent years even, because, certainly it has been a tough time for coal in a lot of ways. You see coal companies going bankrupt. You see coal-fired power plants closing down. Now, there's a lot of factors for this. Some of these are the heavy government regulations that have been put in place on the coal industry. Other parts of it are the fact that our energy markets are, in fact, changing. Fracking, for instance, has unlocked entire oceans of natural gas. And so natural gas is coming onto the market, and we're burning natural gas for, among other things, electrical generation. And all that natural gas, by the way, emits less carbon than coal does. And so, people are seeing that as a net gain, and that's all good. And to the extent that coal's demise might be written by the emergence of better ways of producing energy, well, I don't really have a problem with that. I'm not married to coal as an energy source, although North Dakota has something like an 800-year supply of coal. As long as there are, reasons, as long as there are economically viable reasons to use coal in the marketplace, I'd like to use it. If there's not, if we, discover new ways of producing energy and producing the things that coal provides us, then, I'm fine pursuing those. But right now, coal works, so why not keep using coal? Which is why it's so interesting to me that so many people are talking about coal in this way, as though it's just dead, it's out the door already. It surprises me. I don't think people understand just how important coal continues to be in our energy grid. This last winter, in fact, in January of this year, we had, in our region of the world, the upper Midwest, had a polar vortex. I'm sure you've heard about this because the news media loves sensationalizing bad weather now. Every storm is a code red, and there's a blizzard watch, and we're naming the storms now. That's all. I could do a whole other podcast on that nonsense. A lot of that's just sensationalism and trying to drive clicks and eyeballs and everything else. But we did legitimately have some very frigid weather. I mean, there's no question about it. The weather was bad there for a while. I am looking at a fuel mix pie chart from it's what's called MISO, which is the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. They are basically a regional transmission organization. They provide transmission service. Essentially they dispatch the power in our region, right? They're the ones who are sort of, ensuring that we're getting enough power from all the different sources and dispatching it where it needs to go, all that stuff. They're in charge of that. I am simplifying what they do, enormously, but suffice it to say that's what they do. Anyway, based on their data, they had a chart at the depths of the polar vortex when it was, negative 20 and plus outside. It wasn't wind power or solar power or hydroelectric power or anything like that was driving our energy, that was keeping our lights on, that was keeping the heaters running. It was coal, and to a lesser extent, natural gas and nuclear power that was providing what we needed. In fact, more than half of all the power we were getting at that moment was coal. Now, let's go back to what Mr. Magnuson said in his letter. He said, I quote, "Short term, until renewables become exclusive in North Dakota, coal is merely a backup source of energy and not a primary source." Well, what do you call a source of energy that is the most viable, that is the most resilient, that is in fact providing you with most of the energy you need when the weather is so bad the other sources of energy aren't providing much power at all? Well, I think you would not call it a backup power supply. I don't think that you would call it a backup source of energy. Coal is baseline energy. Coal is always there when we need it. It doesn't matter how hot it gets or how cold it gets. Coal works all the time, year round. It doesn't matter what the weather is. It is it's not perfect. I'm not saying it's 100% reliable, but certainly it is our most reliable source of energy. In fact, it's even more resilient than natural gas. I don't know if you remember this, but during the quote-unquote polar vortex, the folks in Minnesota Utilities was asking customers to turn down their thermostats because there was a natural gas shortage. XL Energy asked natural gas customers to lower their thermostats until 63 degrees for days on end because they had a natural gas shortage. Interestingly, factories in Minnesota that, are powered by natural gas during that same time were also asked to shut down production due to natural gas shortages. And part of this is because natural gas depends on pipelines, and pipelines, it's just not as reliable as coal. Let's suffice it. Let's just put it that way. It's not as reliable as coal power is. And so here's my problem with the way we're talking about energy, because obviously in our neck of the woods, having the power on, at certain times of the year, it's not just a convenience. It's an economic necessity all the time, right? How do you run grocery stores without electricity? How do you conduct just about any type of business without electricity? But above and beyond that, when the weather is terrible outside, and I'm not just talking about cold, but when it gets really, really hot in North Dakota as well, I mean, there are risks to the sick, there are risks to the elderly. And when it's cold outside, we all want our heaters going. I mean, it's not just a luxury. It is a life and death necessity. And what keeps the heat going? What keeps the lights on? Well, coal does. Coal works. Again, coal works all the time. What bothers me is so much of our debate about energy is driven by partisanship, is driven by ideology. The Democratic Party's position on coal is that you're supposed to be opposed to it, which is why we have, essentially a Democratic Party official writing letters to the editor, which are ignorant and ill-informed, as the facts that I've just laid out for you illustrate, but is basically writing letters to the editor saying that coal is dead. This is not informed by reality. This is not informed by facts or some, pragmatic analysis of what's actually going on in our region. It's ideology driving this. It's politics driving this. Sources like coal power, sources like solar power, they have most favored political status right now. Status enjoyed by other energy sources like ethanol and others in the past. And that's not to say that there aren't politicians out there working on behalf of coal and oil. There certainly are. But coal and oil, for the most part, are out of favor. The news media don't really like them. The activists don't really like them. Very large political factions don't really like them that much. And so they're out of political favor. And we talk about them that way and we deride them that way. And again, that's not based on reality. That's not based on what's worked. That's just based on on politics. And so politics is pushing us to become more and more dependent on wind energy, more and more dependent on solar energy. And these are power sources that will not be able to. They are not dispatchable, which is to say that they are not, you can't just ramp them up and down as power needs go up and down. They're not dispatchable. They're not resilient in the way that coal is. Now, again, we have something like 800 years of coal available in North Dakota based on current rates of consumption. 800 years. And during that time, we could certainly do a lot to figure out how to use coal better. In fact, we have over the years. We've had, remember when, the acid rain issues, right? Because of sulfur emissions. We had mercury emissions were a question for a while. Right now we're working on carbon emissions, right? Carbon capture. That's the big pressing problem that we're all working on right now. Over the years, coal has improved. It's not the coal-fired, of the, yesteryear, right? Like Victorian London, where you had all that haze and all that smoke and everything because of all the coal-fired, all the steam engines and all the coal-fired, whatever, and people are heating their homes with coal. It's not like that anymore. We've become beyond that. And there's no reason why we can't continue to improve coal. There's no reason why coal, in addition to other resources, competitive with those other resources, can't be the energy of the future as well. Again, we have a lot of it. Why would we not use this resource? Why would we not put resources into figuring out how to use coal as a resource better as the years go on? Why are we staking out this ideological position on coal, this political position on coal that, again, is not really informed by reality? It's just sort of informed by, politics. It's frustrating. We have a lot of coal in America, and we could use that coal to, make our economy run, to make our homes run, to keep our cost of living down. We could do that, but we're not going to do that if we listen to the ideologues. I've written more about this at sayanythingblog.com. Go check that out. My interview with State Senator Janne Myrdal up next. This episode of the Plain Talk Podcast is brought to you by Energy of North Dakota. Oil and natural gas from North Dakota strengthens all of America. And through our abundance of talents, innovations, and technologies, energy responsibly produced here translates to worldwide economic stability. With producers and our communities working together, we're securing a sustainable future that generation after generation can build on. It's all happening right now with Energy of North Dakota. Learn more at energyofnorthdakota.com. State Senator Janne Myrdal joins me now. Janne, recently you organized, is it fair to say that you organized a letter from state lawmakers to North Dakota State University concerning their research partnership with Planned Parenthood concerning sex education? Is that the right term for it, that you organized it?
I wouldn't say so. It was several legislators, Rob, that got together on this, and I would say about a couple of dozen that were concerned about this throughout session. And at the end of the session, when those safe spaces were announced once again, we just got together and went to the leadership and to the chambers and said, this is what we're doing. And if I'd had more time, I think we would probably have 95 or 100 legislators. But
now, when you said safe spaces, what do you mean by that?
That's the program that Planned Parenthood is using. NDSU as a conduit, sort of, to get money for this program to go into our teachers, K through 12 teachers. It's called Safe Spaces, which is kind of ridiculous name. But
why do you object to this?
Well, there's several points, and in our letter, let me make it clear, we didn't ask them to drop the workshops. We just had legitimate questions as lawmakers. NDSU is a state-funded school, as you and I know. They applied for a federally funded program, and then they basically funneled it, or they were a pure conduit for Planned Parenthood of North Dakota, Minnesota, and South Dakota to give them over $600,000, Rob, through sort of channeled through as a conduit through NDSU, and they say it's NDSU. It's what is it called? Academic freedom, and I believe in academic freedom if it's germane to the university and its needs. But there's no academic freedom here because this is outreach. This is Planned Parenthood, as you and I speak somewhere today. I think Jamestown or Dickinson are out teaching our teachers how to teach K through 12th, and let me repeat that, K through 12th, Rob, pretty explicit sexual conduct and sexual activities. And we just think that's wrong.
Now, this is what Amy Jacobson said. I'm reading here. This is from an article by my colleague, April Baumgarten of the Forum News Service. Amy Jacobson, she's North Dakota's director for Planned Parenthood. She said this, I quote, "It basically focuses on positive youth development and adolescent sexual risk behaviors. It talks about the importance of communicating between youth and a trusted adult." Now, I think the way a lot of people are perceiving this is Planned Parenthood is promoting a sex education curriculum that isn't necessarily what North Dakota law prescribes, which is essentially sort of abstinence only based education. They're taking a different approach to that. Is that the problem here? Is that it's undermining North Dakota's abstinence only approach?
No, that's not. There's a couple of problems right there. Number one, that's really good fluffy language from Ms. Jacobson.
Okay.
We're kind of used to that from Planned Parenthood. That's very fluffy language. You have to look where the money goes here. Our problem as lawmakers is this: why is NDSU, whose charter is ag and other research, why are they allowing themselves to be used as a conduit for the nation's largest abortion provider to get into our schools? That's an issue. And we're more concerned even, and I have to give credit to Brashani. He gave us a long answer, but we're even more concerned because they're literally being used as a conduit. Secondly, we don't just teach abstinence only in North Dakota, even though that should be the priority, just like we teach kids don't smoke. We don't teach them how to better smoke, Rob, or don't drink underage, because sexual activity for young children is equally as physically and health-wise dangerous as smoking or drinking, because of sexually transmitted diseases now causes cancer and other things. So that's just ridiculous to say that Planned Parenthood wants them to stay abstinent. But I want to correct you in one thing, if I may. We do teach excellent sex education in North Dakota. DPI, we asked them, and we asked the NDSU, did anybody ask for this? Did teacher ask for this? Did schools ask for it? And the answer was a clear no. And DPI says they have never had one phone call from a teacher that we don't have excellent sex education in our schools. So why, our question as lawmaker is, why is a state-funded institution, and especially in this budget that we're dealing with, allowing a national organization that is extremely questionable, certainly in North Dakota, and the legislative intent is not to have them involved in North Dakota whatsoever? Why are we allowing a state-funded institution with our taxpayers' monies funnel federal monies, which is also our money, Rob, our taxpayers' money, through their institution and give them paychecks to basically their headquarters in Minneapolis for them to come in and teach sexuality to our children as young as kindergarten? Let's get to this. I know they're very mild how they teach here. I've seen some of the materials they taught last week. It's a little milder than what they do nationwide. But do we really need K through 12 sex education from an organization like that? No, we don't. We can do that ourselves. We are doing it in schools currently. So nobody's saying that sex education shouldn't be done, Rob. And that's the forum I saw wrote that we're not, like, we're against sex education. That's absolutely not it. And we're not meddling with academic freedom. We're not doing that. We're just questioning why on earth are NDSU allowing themselves to be used by this organization that is not welcome here. And follow the money, Rob. Who makes money here?
Yeah.
And Planned Parenthood makes all the money. What NDSU student is profiting from this? Is there anything germane to the teaching in that classroom? I think I sent you the research. It's a page and a half of nothing. A third grader could write it. This is not research. This is just being used for a liberal wing of a political party like Planned Parenthood works with to teach, to get new clients and future clients, and to get kids sexually active in North Dakota.
I think
can say what you.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is a fair criticism to say that Planned Parenthood is a partisan organization. Maybe they weren't. If we rolled back the clock 10 years ago, I'm not sure you could say the same thing. But in this modern era of politics, some of these groups, Planned Parenthood on the left, I would say the National Rifle Association on the right, have sort of transcended their original, issue-centric, policy-centric approach and have become much more partisan. So Planned Parenthood is more than just whether you or I agree with it, but their core advocacy on abortion and other sorts of reproductive sex education issues, they have transcended that into partisan politics generally. And I think it's fair to question why a group that at this point is, and I think if you look at a lot of recent writing, I mean, even left-wing journalists and authors have acknowledged that, these groups are essentially partisan today. They're essentially a wing of the Democratic Party. And so I think, I think it's fair for Republicans to say, hey, wait a minute, why are we funneling money into Planned Parenthood? I think it would be fair for Democrats if the National Rifle Association were partnering with NDSU in something that was just sort of a thin veneer to funnel money into the NRA. I think it'd be fair for Democrats to question and say, hey, why are we funneling money into the NRA? Even though you and I, Janne, would be, obviously much more, more gratified, maybe because we generally like the NRA. So, I think that's a fair criticism. What I'm wondering though, because here's where I am. I am pro-life. I don't want to see abortions happen. I have begun though to evolve and wonder if restrictions on abortion or some of the traditionally socially conservative points of view on this matter are conducive to lowering the number of abortions. If we have sex education that can reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies, shouldn't we want that?
Oh, absolutely. But let's look at what they actually do teach, though, and why do you want 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 10-year-olds? These are the three groups that I think it was out in Dickinson or whatever. They taught them explicit sexual things that I don't want to say on the air with you.
Well, why not? I mean, you could say them on the air. This is a podcast. Let's talk about let's have our listeners understand exactly what's being taught here.
Well, they're being taught. I mean, they're showing specific, sexual organs and how they function and all these kind of things to again, K through 12. Now, no kid needs 13 years of sex ed. And again, I go back to this. Absolutely, of course, abstinence. One question that I always ask people: if your daughter or your son were abstinent, Rob, who makes money on them? Nobody. But if they're sexually active from the age of 10 or 12, which is what Planned Parenthood pushes, and they can say they don't, but we know they do, I can prove it, all across the nation, who makes money on them? Certainly Planned Parenthood, all kinds of other businesses, billion-dollar industries. There's nothing healthy about your young children being sexually active. So does it happen? Yes. And we believe, just like you do, that yes, good comprehensive sex education. Now, I'm not speaking on behalf of other legislators. There's the Catholic faith that has certain issues with certain birth control. I have issues with birth control that are abortifacient. Those are all personal things. Nobody's trying to get into people's bedrooms here, but we're talking about our children. We're not talking adults here. We're talking about our children. So we should do the utmost. I mean, you want to put the standard high. I really, truly believe our children aren't sexual animals. We can put the standard high. If they fail, we'll be right there with them, and we are. And by the way,
are we sexualizing children though? And again, I think we've just sort of covered broad strokes with Planned Parenthood's teaching here, and I'm not necessarily defending Planned Parenthood, but just as a concept, is it really that bad to teach a 10-year-old this is a penis, this is a vagina, this is what happens when you put a penis and vagina together? I mean, that's a fact of life. I mean, that's a biological reality. And if they understand what that is, and they understand, what the outcomes are and some of the even at 10, doesn't that maybe help them make better decisions if they're in a position where they could choose to have sex in the future, knowing still that we're not necessarily encouraging them to do that?
Well, isn't that a parental job? Isn't that mom and dad's job? To see your individual child. Every individual child develops differently. You can have a 13-year-old ask that question, or you can have a 7-year-old ask that belongs in a home, and it certainly doesn't belong through funneling money to a group.
I have a 3-year-old who's going to be 4 this fall, and he is asking questions about body parts, and I am beginning to answer those questions for him. I just don't. What I worry about is, and again, Planned Parenthood, I understand, has partisan connotations, political connotations, I think, which make your objection worthy. What I'm worried about, though, is I don't necessarily want to stand behind abstinence-only sex education. I think we've reached a point where we could be adults about this. And yes, these conversations should happen with kids. There's nothing necessarily wrong, though, with them happening in schools as well, and kids just understand it, because again, these are biological realities. These are facts of life. This is the truth of the world around us.
No, I agree with you. So let's start with abstinence and let's have sex education. Absolutely. I personally agree with you. But the interesting thing that we don't talk about, Rob, is that we're scared of teen pregnancy. By the way, in North Dakota, which is contradictory to what your employer, the Forum, wrote, we have dropped 47% since 2007 and 30% since 2016 in teen pregnancies in North Dakota. Those are the most recent numbers. I don't know what numbers the Forum used. But let's not talk about pregnancy. Let's talk about the sexually transmitted diseases. None of what Planned Parenthood teaches, whether it's condoms, which is less than 60%, if that, and you know as well as I do, if we're going to really talk straight here, that if a 15 or 16-year-old are having sex, they're not making love, they're having sex. And I bet you, Rob, 90% of them don't stop to put that condom on. I mean, come on, let's be real here. And so what are we looking at? 43 or 46 sexually transmitted diseases, 3 or 4 that can kill young women later, or infertility. So having a child is not the greatest, as horrible and untimely as that can be for a teenager. That's life. That's something we can deal with, whether it's adoption or single parenting or whatever. What we're not dealing with, and what Planned Parenthood frankly don't care about, no matter how much fluff they put on their material, is those diseases that are there for children.
Yeah.
So I understand your argument, but that's kind of like saying your son is going to start smoking when he's 9 or 10, so make sure he gets good cigarettes. No, you're going to tell him, sweetheart, this is not good for you. It's unhealthy for you.
Well, one day my son, I mean, just, sex is not smoking. I hope that my son never smokes. I hope that one day he has a healthy, responsible sex life, though. I mean, he's going to have sex eventually, and I hope when he does it, he's making good, sound decisions about it. And I just don't know that pretending that 15 or 16-year-olds aren't going to find a way to have sex if they really want to have sex is all that. I mean, you said that, I mean, let's face it, maybe 15, 16-year-olds, 90% of them probably aren't taking time to put on a condom. Isn't that an area where we could improve? Like, if we target that and say, listen, if you're going to do it, wear a condom, maybe we could get that number to 50%, 80% of them that are wearing a condom. What's possible?
And then the question goes back to, who should teach them that? Should you as a parent, should the community, or should we bring in a group that eventually, honestly, bottom line, Dr. Wen, their new director of Planned Parenthood in January, said, our prime focus is expanding abortion, period. She tweeted that out. Yeah. So are we going to entrust that? That's our concern. We're going to entrust NDSU to clear federal money and a state-funded institution to a group that profits off the demise of our children. That is our struggle.
I think it's fair to question Planned Parenthood's motivations. They obviously have partisan and ideological motivations. They obviously have a business interest as well in unwanted pregnancies. I mean, that's the reality. And I mean, there's a saying out there about it's called the Shirky principle, which is essentially that organizations that are created to solve a problem will eventually stop trying to solve that problem, because if they solve that problem, then they cease to exist. I think a lot of the things that you're talking about with Planned Parenthood are real, but just as a matter of public policy in North Dakota, I'm not necessarily against. I don't know that Planned Parenthood is the right messenger for it. In fact, I know that they are not. I'm just not against having a debate saying, can we improve sex education in our schools? Let's maybe drag some more of this out into the sunlight, stop treating it like it's this taboo subject, and just talk about it frankly. And from there, hopefully, everybody starts making better decisions, whether it's 15-year-olds or 30-year-olds, starts making better decisions when it comes to sex, because STDs and unwanted pregnancies can happen at just about any stage of life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? This is a local control issue, too. When I was talking to DPI, they don't even demand. They have certain programs that they offer. We have certain policies in North Dakota that we say we promote life and potential life, and we promote abstinence. But local school boards and local teachers should be absolutely in control of this, and parents need to be involved. But number one, it starts in the home. It starts with parents. Those kids that fall through the cracks. We have an excellent program in Grand Forks with the Crisis Pregnancy Center there. We have developed a phenomenal program that they can go out and do. But NDSU didn't look at anybody. They didn't look at any other programs. They went right to Planned Parenthood, who's already doing it in Minnesota and South Dakota, and now we're funding them to do it. $2,000 for condoms? Seriously? Is that what your taxpayers' money should go for? to an organization that makes over $1 billion a year.
Well,
and by the way,
I don't necessarily mind spending tax dollars on condoms because the implications of unwanted pregnancies for the taxpayers are a lot bigger than what a condom costs. So I don't know. I mean, some of that I guess I don't necessarily object to. I do think you're right, Janne, that Planned Parenthood is absolutely the wrong partner for this. If we're really interested in doing this, then I think there are a lot of other partners who would be better, who don't have maybe some of the contradictions and motivations and some of the partisan and ideological motivations that Planned Parenthood has. So I think you're right as far as that goes. What I would like to see though is maybe a more enlightened view on, and I think you and I are largely in agreement on this. Maybe a more enlightened view when it comes to talking about some of this stuff publicly and in our public schools and everywhere else. I don't know that it's a right to treat sex like it's this shameful thing. It's a thing. It happens.
No.
If you do it the right way, it's a wonderful thing. If you make responsible decisions with it, it's a wonderful thing. And that's just what we've got to teach is responsibility.
Well, and I know, Rob, that people call me naive, right? I'm a conservative. I'm a Christian. I believe sex belongs in a marriage.
I am not calling you naive at all.
I know. But a lot of people do. Oh, I've gotten emails. You won't believe this last week, and I don't care. But reality is, I firmly, as a person, believe sex belongs in a marriage. I'm not naive. I know it happens. Are you kidding me? I'm from Europe. I see kids around. I worked with teen pregnancies, crisis pregnancies for 35 years. However, let's put the standard high. And if our children fail, we'll be there to catch them. But let's not put this kind of stuff into the minds of K through 10th, 12th, 14th, year of age. That's ridiculous. We need to protect our children. Secondly, just to go back to, you said political affiliation. I just read a thing a couple of days ago that out of all the people who voted no in Congress a couple of months ago to the Born Alive Infant Act, every one of them were Democrats, and every one of the Democrats were given large donations from Planned Parenthood last time they were elected, and they are now raising $50 million against Republicans and this president. So Planned Parenthood has become a wing of the Democratic Party. It's sad because I think in North Dakota there's a lot of Democrats voters that are pro-life. They don't know where to go anymore because the party has gone off the deep end.
Well,
and that's sad. And so back to our concern as lawmakers, it isn't so much a Republican concern. It's a concern that our state-funded institution is being used as a mouthpiece and a conduit because of some liberal faculty members, and they're hiding behind academia to do so, and that is wrong for the people in North Dakota, wrong for our children, period.
Janne, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Plain Talk podcast. As you might have noticed, I took a week off there. I needed a little time off. And hey, it's summer. It's been beautiful. Well, the weather's mostly been beautiful. We live in North Dakota. What are you going to do about the weather, right? At least it's always interesting. Am I right? Anyway, thanks for listening. We should be returning to our normal podcast schedule going forward here for the rest of the summer. Remember, that means the episodes on Monday will be my recorded weekly segments on the Jay Thomas Show from WDAY AM 970, which you should be, if you're in Jay's listening area, and you all are because you can listen online, you should be listening to his show. He does a great job. Jay's always a lot of fun to listen to. I'm on with him Mondays at 2 p.m. and I record those segments and put them in the podcast stream. And then Tuesday through Friday, new episodes from me. That's sort of the summer schedule going forward. And also new episodes come out right away in the morning when there are new episodes. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at Rob Port on Twitter. You can find Say Anything blog on Facebook and Twitter as well. And just search for Rob Port. If you want to be my friend on Facebook on my personal page, I post all the blog stuff and my column stuff there as well. So I wouldn't mind being your friend if you want to be my friend. And if you friend me on one of these services, say hi, because I like it when people say hi. Rob at sayanythingblog.com is the way to reach out to me if you're having any trouble accessing the podcast, you have any feedback, you have questions for our weekly guests, Senator Kevin Cramer, Congressman Kelly Armstrong. And thanks for listening. I appreciate it. We'll talk again.